everyone. In this lesson, we're going to go over mobile testing. Okay, what you need to learn to become a mobile tester or a software tester that specializes in mobile testing. We're going to go over the basics of testing native, hybrid, and mobile web apps. And by the end of the course, you're going to know exactly what you need to learn in order to be a mobile tester and how to get started learning it. So let's get you on the path to becoming a confident mobile tester. Remember, 80% of users delete an app after the first time, after just one bad experience. That's why mobile testing is very critical. So mobile testing is testing apps, both native and web-based, to ensure they work correctly across different devices, screen sizes, operating systems, and network conditions. Basically, you'd be the specialist that test on phones, tablets, all different models, all different screen size, and very often different hardware. Okay, so why is it unique compared to a software tester that only does web and desktop? Well, mobile apps are a whole different game. Okay, you have touch screens, swipes, pinches, taps, so a lot of things that have to do with your fingers. Device fragmentation, tons of devices with different screen sizes, brands, OS versions. You got hardware differences, cameras, GPS, fingerprint scanners, right? That's all technology that you don't test on desktop. You got battery usage, memory consumption, mobile specific issues like network switching, Wi-Fi to 4G, offline access, app permissions. I mean, mobile testing is a whole different game when it comes to testing, which is why it's its own specialty. You can get certified specifically on mobile testing. So here we're going to have the types of testing for mobile. First, you got to do your functional testing, right? Which is the installation of the app, user interface testing, all the links, buttons, forms, everything the user sees. Notifications and alerts, very important, right? You don't do that on desktop. Make sure that when you set the settings that you get the notification for that specific app. Transaction integrity, right? You got to be able to safely complete a transaction. Accessibility testing. Make sure the app or site is accessible to people with visual impairments, hearing loss, motor impairments, cognitive challenges, gestures, tap targets, forms, menus, color contrast, and text size. All that needs to be tested. Now again, if you're a mobile tester and that's your specialty, you gotta learn the basics of accessibility testing. But you can also specialize as an accessibility tester, and then you'd have to do a more in-depth test where you go over the WCAG requirements and all that stuff. But if you're specializing as a mobile tester, then you gotta learn the basics of accessibility testing. Usability testing, the navigation, ease of moving through the different sections of the app, like the hamburger menus, things like that. User feedback, that's part of UAT, and error handling. Next, we have performance testing, which would include your load testing for multiple user simulation, stress testing to push the app beyond normal operations, network testing, which is different connections like 3G, 4G, 5G, or Wi-Fi, the battery consumption, memory usage, crashes, server response time. Okay, all that is part of performance testing. And then we would do security testing, which is the authentication and authorization, data encryption, input validation, vulnerabilities such as SQL injection, XSS, etc., session management, the expiration policies, timeouts, vulnerability scanning. You would use automation tools to scan for these. So these are the main principles and the types of testing you would do for mobile. Let's go over some of the automation testing tools used for mobile testing. We'll start with Espresso. So this is Android's Google native UI testing tool. It's for developers that like fast and reliable in-app UI tests. It's got very tight integration with Android Studio. It's got fast execution because it runs tests inside the app process. It's great for unit style and UI component tests. Of course, the only bad thing is it only works for Android, and it's less flexible for complex gestures or device level automation. Next we have XCUI test. This is the Apple's native UI testing framework for the iOS apps. It's used by developers that like to write tests specifically for iPhone or iPads. It's got deep integration with the iOS ecosystem and Swift. It can be used with XCTest to write functional and performance tests. And it's got good access to device level features like gestures and sensors. Cons is that it only works for iOS, and the setup and debugging can be tricky for beginners. Now, let's go over the cross-platform. This, of course, means it's good for both iOS and Android, so these are some of the most popular. Appium especially. Appium is the most popular. If you were to learn one from all these tools, I'd say start with Appium. Appium is the UI automation that can be integrated with JMeter or BlazeMeter for performance testing, and it's for testers and QA engineers that are looking for a write once, run anywhere mobile test script. The strength is that it uses WebDriver protocol similar to Selenium. It works with many languages, Java, Python, JavaScript, etc. It can test real devices, emulators, and simulators. Now, its limitations are that it's slower than Espresso and XCUI test. It needs more setup config than the native frameworks, and the test can be flaky if they're not written carefully. So, next we have Headspin. This one supports UI automation testing. It uses frameworks like Appium, XCUI test, and Espresso. This one fits in multiple categories: mobile testing and performance testing, as well as remote device testing. Headspin is a cloud platform. Okay, it's for teams needing remote access to real devices. So people like Headspin because it tests from your framework of choice, Appium, XCUI test, and Express, and it captures performance data including network latency and screen rendering, crashes, includes video recordings and AI-based debugging suggestions. So this one's a great tool for both functional UI testing and performance diagnostics. Now the cons of Headspin are that it's a paid platform. It can get expensive, and it requires a steep learning curve to use all the features. Detox. This is for teams developing in React Native that want fast and reliable automation. It runs directly inside the app. It makes it faster and less flaky. It supports both iOS and Android as well. It's great for testing app flows like the login, navigation, data input. It integrates well with CI/CD pipelines, but it has some limitations, and the setup is more dev-centric, so you need Node.js and some other configurations. But those are the best tools. Get familiar with all these if you definitely want to get into mobile testing. Now let's go over accessibility. Accessibility testing tools specifically for mobile. So you can use VoiceOver, which is for iOS, Apple. This is the built-in screen reader for iOS that it provides the spoken feedback and gesture-based navigation for users with visual impairments. And then we have TalkBack, which is the Android built-in screen reader, and it lets visually impaired users interact with the device using voice prompts and gestures. We have Accessibility Scanner for Android. This is Google's tool that analyzes Android app screens and suggests improvements for accessibility like touch target, size, and contrast. Then we have Axe DevTools Mobile. This is a powerful on-device testing tool by DEC it scans native iOS and Android apps for WCAG compliance and accessibility issues. Now, if you're going to be an accessibility tester, you definitely need to learn the DevTools, the Axe DevTools. I would say if you're just specializing in mobile testing but not specializing in accessibility, then you need to get familiar with VoiceOver, TalkBack, and the scanner. Right? DevTools is a little more advanced. That's for in-depth accessibility. Next, we have your native phone accessibility settings, which is your operating system level settings on iOS and Android that support assistive tech like the switch control, keyboard settings, voice control, magnification, and custom gestures. So now let's go over the tools that you can use for Usability testing. Here we go. Usability testing tools for mobile. We got lookback.io. This is remote usability testing with screen recordings and user feedback. User testing. This is crowdsourced usability testing with real users. In fact, I'm part of user testing. Any one of you guys can sign up. Go to usertesting.com and you can do tests for other companies, and they pay you like $10 per test, so it's pretty cool. Playbook UX, that's usability testing and research platform with mobile support. Hotjar for mobile web, heat maps and user interaction tracking, and Maze prototype testing, which works with Figma, InVision, etc. for mobile designers. But remember, usability testing is usually done at the UAT stage, which could be done by the tester or it could be outsourced. And then performance testing tools for mobile, we have Android Studio Profile, which monitors CPU, memory, network, and battery usage. We have Firebase Performance Monitoring, Google's tool for real-time insights for Android and iOS. Then we have Xamarin Test Cloud, cloud-based testing across real devices by Microsoft. We have Instruments, which is Xcode, Apple's tool for iOS performance profiling. Kobeton, real device testing with performance data and crash logs. And Grafana K6, formerly known as just K6, which is for load testing tool for backend APIs. It integrates with Grafana dashboard. Remember that usually performance and API testing go hand in hand, so sometimes you'll see a tool that's listed on both or just listed under API tools, but people will be like, oh, that's for performance. Or they'll be listed under performance and people are like, but that tests API. So don't worry about that as long as you learn them. A lot of these work for both. They're all part of the same testing family. Now here are the backend tools that are more specific for API testing. So Postman, that's a big one and the most common one. That is API development and testing platform, which is great for manual API calls and automation with collections. We got Rest Assured, Java-based library for automating REST API tests, often used in backend test suites. SOAP UI, functional testing for REST and SOAP APIs. It supports complex test scenarios with assertions. JMeter, one of the most commonly used ones also, does load testing tool that can simulate API traffic and measure backend performance under load. Grafana K6, as we saw previously, it's developer-friendly load testing tool for APIs. You write those tests in JavaScript. Charles Proxy, it's a debugging proxy that captures API request responses from mobile devices for inspection. Wireshark, network protocol analyzer that helps inspect backend traffic, useful for advanced debugging. And Fiddler, which is similar to the Charles proxy, monitors HTTPS traffic between mobile apps and servers. Now, let's go over security testing tools for mobile testing. MobSF, Mobile Security Framework. This is automated security testing, static and dynamic analysis. OWASP ZAP. This is an open source security scanner for mobile web and APIs. Burp Suite, powerful web vulnerability scanner used to inspect and manipulate traffic between mobile apps and servers. It intercepts mobile API requests. Drozer, this is Android Security Assessment Framework. CARC, Quick Android Review Kit. It identifies security vulnerabilities in Android apps. AppScan, HCL or Veracode, enterprise-grade mobile app security testing. Now remember, there is a specialization in security testing. So if you're a security tester, you definitely have to learn how to do security testing on mobile as well. And if you're a mobile tester, you might want to learn some of these if you want to do security testing, but usually, companies will hire a security tester specifically to do that type of test. Now the cloud-based testing platforms, we got Browser Stack app live. It runs tests on a wide range of mobile devices in the cloud. Sauce Labs, it's similar to Browser Stack. It supports Appium, Espresso, and other frameworks. These two I've seen very often, so I would say learn these. These are the most common ones. and Bitbar by SmartBear, which is Real Device Cloud for testing Android and iOS apps. Now here is your path to mobile testing. Let's start at the bottom. We have obviously all your basic testing, which means you have to learn to perform all the types of testing for mobile, which are in these bullets here: functional usability, performance, security, compatibility, localization, and accessibility. Now I didn't go over localization before because that's usually given to just the bilingual testers. Localization means you're going to test how the app loads in different countries and different languages. So usually they give it to the person that specializes in that language because they have to read the text and understand it. But if you're just normal English only tester, then the only localization test you'll be doing is making sure that it loads, or that the URL goes, and make sure the language looks different. So it'd be very basic. So let's go over the simulators and emulators you'd have to learn: Xcode, Android Studio, Browser Stack for different browsers, Sauce Labs, which is cross-browser testing for different OS systems. Then you're definitely going to get familiar with real device testing. As a mobile tester, you have to have hands-on actual devices. Apple, Android, different tablets, different models. Same skills as all the other ones: communication, attention to detail, problem solving, adaptability. Very important in mobile because, as you know, phones change every single year. So every single year you're going to have to be writing new tests to support new features and keep up with technology. Software development lifecycle methodologies: Agile, Scrum, Kanban, Waterfall. Gotta be familiar with that. With the project management and defect tracking tools: Jira, Bugzilla, TestRail, the most common. Accessibility testing, something you definitely gotta do on mobile. So get familiar with your voiceover, talkback, your accessibility scanner, and if you want to go in depth with your AxDev tools for mobile, which would cover all the WCAG requirements. Performance testing: Android Studio Profile, Firebase, Xmarine, Xcode, Grafana K6, and JMeter are the ones that I choose as the most commonly used out in the industry. For automation testing on mobile: Appium, Espresso, XCUI Test, Headspin. Now Maestro, as you noticed, I did not include that in the slides, but I put them here because it's a good one to know. It's a cross-platform testing framework, which means it supports both Android and iOS. It's very similar in purpose to tools like Appium, Espresso, and XCUI Test. But the reason I didn't include it in the slides is because its emphasis is simplicity and speed, which makes it attractive just for small teams and rapid iteration cycles. So it is not in the most commonly used, but it's good to be familiar with and know it. And we have XOQ. For security testing, you gotta learn MobSF, OWASP, ZAP, BurpSuit, Quark. And for your API testing tools: Postman, the most common one, Rest Assured, Charles Proxy, SoapUI, and Fiddler, which is the same as Charles. So now you have here a really good start to your path to do mobile testing. You don't have to learn absolutely everything that's on the list, right? But if you pick the most common ones that I mentioned, 2 out of each step, then you're well on your way to becoming a mobile tester.